Larkin took, especially considering losing Zetterberg at the beginning of the season?
Well, I thought he took a huge step. I think the steps as you get towards that top of the pyramid are harder and harder and harder to take, and so you don't know on any player when they've kind of reached their max. You just don't know until it all plays out. And I know Larkin wants to be to continuously get better and better and better, and I thought he took a huge step this year. Now I also think for us to win. Moving forward, he's going to have to continue to take steps, and both at his overall game. I think he's become a real good, well-rounded centerman, but I think he can be better at it. Better at both sides of the puck, all those types of things. I think he thinks that. So it was a great step. We need another big step from him.
Just one of the encouraging things out of this season that you had a lot of injuries, and yet you sustained competitive performances most nights.
Yeah, I think so. I think I said this, between the first injury was Zetterberg and the other injuries as we went through the season, certainly the Band-Aid was ripped off, and we had a whole bunch of times where we had to sink or swim, and I thought certainly enough nights we sank, but I thought enough nights we stayed very competitive in those situations, and I think in the end we're better for it. It's hard to learn how to win until you go through some of those experiences, and that's probably the biggest thing. I think guys, you asked me about Larks, and I think you could ask me about a number of other guys that took good steps and were better players this year and are better now than they were a year ago. But all collectively, we have to keep learning how to win. And a lot of times to learn how to win, you have to go through tough times. You have to go through bumps and bruises. I've made reference a few times to, the late 80s, early 90s here, where this team was moving towards wanting to be a championship team, but they didn't just become it overnight. I mean, I remember as a fan, a lot of the media at the time saying they weren't winners. And well, how do you become winners? You learn how to win. And it can be hard, and certainly I don't like going through it. You guys don't like going through it. Nobody likes going through it, but it's part of it. And I believe that'll help us, but only if we keep taking steps forward. If we're the exact same team come the fall, meaning the individuals are the exact same come the fall as when they left here today, we're not good enough.
Is it realistic to expect a more significant jump standings-wise, considering the progress that some of the young guys made this season?
It's realistic in a sense that without a shadow of a doubt, you can make jumps in this league. That's the reality of it. The league's so tight. It'll only happen if some of those individuals we talked about that took a step take another step. It'll only happen if some of our guys that have been around here a long time, veterans, take a step. It'll only happen if some of the guys we'd like to see come up from Grand Rapids or maybe had lesser roles as young players take a step. That's the only way it happens. And the best way for your ceiling to rise is for the individual players to get better. So we've talked lots in here about this. It's hard in this league to really, really help yourself from the outside. The reality is it's got to come from growth on the inside. And I believe, and I've said this lots, that our arc is starting to head in the right direction, but it won't keep heading the right direction if we don't get better.
That'd be kind of interesting. I mean, we got months from training camp, but a lot of things could shake out. But you guys, I mean, both the forwards and the defense, there could be a lot of position battles there in training camp.
Yeah, I think, I talked to some of the, I thought the last 10, 11 games, I had talked to some of the forwards, about trying to win spots. For example, a guy like Matt show me that you should be that first line winger with Larson. I think he did a good job of that. I think Bert did a good job of that. Double A did a good job of showing that he can be a top two line center. Whether that plays out as we move forward or not, we'll see. But they did a good job of doing that. But there's tons of other battles to be had. I mean, we're not good enough. So as I said a year ago, and I'll say again, how do you get better? You get better either by the individual players getting better or other guys replacing them. That's how you get better. So, you have certain guys at your disposal to potentially replace them, or the individual players have to get better. And I do believe in the summer is the one time as an individual that you can get way better at something, whatever that something is. And I'm giving each guy one or two things. I believe in a narrowed focus, one or two things to try to get better. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. Habits are formed through umpteen hours of repetitions. And if they choose, it used to be you kind of get ready for training camp in late August and you got yourself in shape and you played. That's not how it is anymore. The best players in the world are getting better at something come late June into early July. So we need to be a team collectively that does that.
When teams start to make that rise across the league and the young players take steps like they have here, player acquisition that fits in there. So is this the summer where you as the head coach like to see some moves made, maybe some trades, some player for player, maybe even picks for players, or some big signings, or is that still something that's maybe a summer or two away?
I still think personally, and I don't want to speak for Ken, I still think personally that the reality of us getting better has to come from the growth of our guys that we currently have. That's what I really believe. And player acquisition ultimately probably happens when you have tons of assets at your disposal, and we don't yet have that because we still have a bunch of guys that got to prove that they are elite type players. And so now for me personally, it's going to totally be players that played good at had good years. Can they get better? Can some guys regain some form?
J.R. Farrell's a agent called Ken Holland. That's not one where you go, well, hold on.
Well, that's a different, to me, free agents are different than, in any type of, I guess, trade type situation. So there's potentially, there's always potentially a free agent or two. Now, there hasn't been very many on the market that are going to really change your team. Certainly, I'm in favor of making our team a little bit better with some free agent acquisitions if they're available. But I would think the whole organization is. I think if we can add players who make you a lot better in a hurry, then you're a lot better in a hurry. And now not so much of the pressure is just on the young players. So yes to that answer. If we can do that, we'd love to do that. We'll see.
Yeah, were you surprised at how quickly and how much terrible roast he was in and give you stepping in so late?
Well, certainly you never know when guys come from college how they're going to, or from any level, how they're going to do until they get to the level. You just don't know. I thought he did a really good job when he first got here. The last couple of games, and him and I will speak later on today, I thought it wasn't as good as the previous games because I think one of the best things that he has at his disposal is he's able to create plays without tons of risk. And at the end of the day, and I've said this tons, you judge players on their reward, positive plays versus negative plays. And I thought he was creating lots of positives without many negatives. And I thought at the end the negatives started to build back up. So I don't think he has to. I think he's a smart enough player to do that, where he can be a real effective player. So he's like everybody else. Like he's going to have to get stronger and quicker. He's got a super good mind. He's got a confidence to him. He looks like a guy that could be a guy that could help you win.
Jeff, heading into from training camp on, the slogan was 60 minutes of hell. Regardless of the outcome of games this year, were you satisfied that the Red Wings, for the most part, were tough to play against, did create havoc for 60 minutes of hell?
My first thought is Saturday was 60 minutes of hell, but on the wrong way. To be dead honest with you. I think we came and we worked and we competed on a pretty damn close to nightly basis. We weren't perfect. Certainly the Boston, Montreal early in the year, the Montreal one here late. Those weren't good enough. Obviously Saturday was not even close. But I thought our guys. I think if you ask people that come to play for us from other teams, I think you ask coaches, we come to practice hard every day. Our guys work every day. They come to practice hard. They come to play hard every day. So I don't think it was necessarily. Was it as much as I would have liked to have had? No, because we weren't as smothering as I would have liked to have been. And certainly we didn't start out that way, but I think that had tons to do with the injuries and the fact that we had a bunch of defensemen playing that hadn't played, and it's a hard league as a young D.
Young forwards obviously got much better. The veteran forwards, not as much. How do those guys compare?
Well, I think each one's on an individual basis, but I think it's looking at their game and saying, how can I make myself super effective in whatever role? You know, sometimes the role diminishes, so it's hard to have lots of points. You know, I'll defend this guy because I know, you know, there's times where Justin Abdicator, when he's been here, he's played with Pavel and played in the top line, been on the power play. Of course you're going to produce more. You get the opportunity to produce more, and then, you know, he didn't have as much of that opportunity this year. So some of it's opportunity-based, you know. Some of it is, and I think a great example is Jimmy Howard. He had to look at himself 3 years ago and kind of redefine what his game was. And I would say the same thing has to happen with a number of our older veteran-type players, forwards and D. How can I redefine my game? How am I gonna make myself a commodity on this hockey team today? If I'm not gonna be a top-line winger, if I'm not gonna be on the power play, what can I do? Do I need to get a little bit quicker? Do I need to get... So to me, it's real individual based, and I don't want to go through each guy, but we are doing that privately. I am giving each player, regardless of age, some type of development plan of how they're going to take this summer. Now it's up to them to go out and do it.
You've been given a 2-year deal. What can you do to elevate yourself? The players are obviously playing the game, but you're in a coaching position. What can you do to help maybe push this team to that next level?
Well, I think, you know, part of the process of coaching the team and is figuring out which guys are best at what, and you'd love to nail it right away. But when there's young guys, specifically when there's certain young guys in the league and they haven't proven what they're great at, you have to kind of go through that process. An example would be Larkin on the power play. We tried him on the half wall for a long time throughout his early part of his career. Now we've moved him into a spot. It's that Bergeron spot in the middle of the ice in the power play that I think he can excel at. And so I think it's part of the job that I have to do is put the right people in the right places. And sometimes that's just a growth experience, both from my end and from their end. I think in the coaching, your job as a coach, you're kind of faced with decisions in people management every day. That's what you're faced with. And so I got to make more right decisions than wrong, and I got to do everything I can to get the very most out of every one of our players. And I think, you know, part of that's relationship based, and sometimes, again, that's a process. You know, a couple of our young guys have only known me. I've only known them as young players, both in Grand Rapids and then when they came here. And that can be hard because I'm making sure that they are figuring out how to be their very best. And I think at times as a young player, you feel attacked and you get defensive. And so the growth isn't what it should be. And then once you kind of develop that relationship where the player doesn't feel attacked, they just know the coach is just trying to help them be better, then they're willing to accept coaching more. I think some of that's happened. So all in those ways would be ways that I can help this team be better.
Hey, Jeff, is it fair to assume that you guys will name a captain next year, or don't you need a captain? Do teams these days even need a captain?
I've had no conversation about that yet with Ken and our coaches and our management. So I would leave that probably for next fall. Can you have no captain? Well, I think there's a lot of teams that have had success without one per se. I think when the situation's right, you name a captain, and if you don't think the situation's right, you stay with assistants. So I think leadership is an extraordinarily important thing. I think it comes from more than one person, and I think it can come regardless if you wear a letter or don't wear a letter.
Jeff, how much will you be involved in trying to recruit guys to play for Team USA in the World Championship? Will you?
Well, I think it's important in that tournament that guys want to go, and my history of recruiting is if people's minds are made up and you change them and you kind of coerce them into going, it doesn't end up a good experience. So I think it's more just basically, so will I make some phone calls? Probably. Will I let them know I want them? Yes. But I don't want anybody that doesn't want to be there. We're going to win a gold medal, and I only want guys that want to be there.
What'd you think of Michael Rasmus this season? It seemed like there was
Yeah, that's a good question. I like Michael Rasmussen long term in the NHL. I think he's going to score goals in the National Hockey League because he does one thing extremely well, and that's he goes to the net, and he's a very good net front guy. And I think that's one of the ways that you can score goals in this league. I think he's got to work to having an impact in other ways besides just that. Although scoring is certainly important. Can he have a better impact in 5-on-5 game? Can he grab onto? Can he become a penalty killer? Can he do those things? Really, really, really hard at 19 years old if you're not a superstar. And so, you know, and even if you are a superstar, it's hard to help really lead your team to wins, you know. So I would just say with him, I think it was a learning experience that he had to go through. I think adversity is a huge part of development. As I talked earlier about our team, it's the same thing with an individual. And I think it was something that he had to go. If he had played another year junior first, for example, how would he have known what he had to get better at? He would have dominated. I watched him dominate last year. I went out and watched with my own eyes him be the very, very best player on the ice in round 2 of the playoffs. So that's against one of the top teams in the league. It's hard to get better when you don't know you have to get better. It's impossible. Anthony Mantha didn't start changing some of his habits until he got to the American League because he scored 80 goals in 80 games. How do you change? So I think what this has done for Michael, it's been very, very difficult at times. It's been hard on him mentally. I think that in the end will make him better, and I think it's helped him understand what he needs to work at today to be a better player tomorrow.
How was that for you next season, and what can it take to get him to be a top pair defenseman?
Phil Hronek? You know, I talked to Phil. First of all, I've said this a lot here lately, and I think it's important to state, though. As this league's gotten younger, everyone said the league's younger, it's about younger players. I agree with that to some level, but I think if you really look at the defensemen in the league, they're not super young. Certainly not the defensemen on winning teams are super young. Young defensemen have a hard time. It's a hard league to be a young defenseman. It takes longer for a defenseman to become an elite-type player than it does for a young forward. It's just a fact. Go look around the league. I would say probably the same thing in net for the most part, but certainly with defensemen. So I think it's going to be it's a process to get to be a top pair type D. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. I recruited Mark Giordano to Ferris State years ago. I did. He was committed to Ferris State. He was supposed to come. I ended up going to coach at Miami. He ended up going to play Major Junior. He's a Norris Trophy. What is he, 36? 36. He's a Norris Trophy candidate. Probably should be this year. He's a great comparable for me. Not super fast, not super big, smart, can add offense 5-on-5 and on the power play, hard to play against. That to me is a real comparable for Philip Hronek. I want him to become Mark Giordano. Now, Mark Giordano took him 12 years to become Mark Giordano. I'm hoping Phil does that quicker, you know. But that's the reality of it. So what steps can he take? Keep creating without giving as much up. That's what players do. Yeah, I guess a good question. I would say, first off, one feeling I'd like to is how much today sucks. You know, like it sucks. It sucks being out. It sucks not getting ready for the playoffs. It sucks having to answer these questions. It sucks having to have another meeting about how we're not good enough. So I would say that more than anything else, because only people that can change that are us. And so that would be one. You know, I certainly think the confidence that was built, certainly probably the latter part of the year with those young forwards specifically. There was you know, they put the team on our back, and I think we went 8-3 in the last 11. How did we do it? There was some other contributing factors, but certainly by a long shot, it was the play of Larkin's line and Double A. Like, that's why, you know. So I think the fact that they, you know, should have earned real confidence of knowing that they were able to put their team in the back and go for that stretch with a real depleted lineup, and that's not a shot at anybody, but it's the reality of the injury situation. I think that should stick with them, but certainly the fact that today sucks, and if you don't want to be here, change it.
How much growth did you see this year from Larkin in terms of his leadership, being more vocal, stand out to you?
Yeah, I would say I've seen him grow over the last couple of years that way. You know, I think without a doubt, he's always been a very, I think, hard on, I don't know if hard on himself is the right word, but he's held himself to a pretty high standard, and he's worked and he's done those things. But I think certainly he was more comfortable this year, and maybe it was the letter, whatever it might be, of speaking up when he needed to speak up without speaking up at the wrong times. I think he did a good job of that. So I've seen some growth.
How will you watch the draft lottery tomorrow?
I haven't decided, to be honest with you. Maybe not in public.
Do you have a superstition, anything like that?
No, I really don't. I think I have 2 hockey practices to attend, an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, I think. So I'll find some place to watch it and see.
Do you
Will there
like
be-
hide in a ring?
I might have to, yeah, or hide my emotions. I'm good at that, though.
Will there be a celebration of sorts by you, though, if you guys are lucky enough to get 1, 2, or 3?
Well, I just think I think you feel good about it that day. I think you feel good about the fact that day you get excited. It's like, it's like when a player gets drafted, they're excited that day. They're super excited, but it doesn't mean that they're going to have a great career, and it doesn't mean that whoever we pick is going to be a great player. Like, we just don't know. So certainly, I think those top few guys have separated themselves in most people's mind, and it feels like the top 2 specifically would have a chance to help next year. I mean, that's what I'm most worried about right now is can somebody come help us next year? It'd be great.
Something like that kind of gives this organization a kick maybe that it needs, not that you guys aren't going to work on
Yeah. No, I think it gives the organization a kick for sure. It gives the organization a boost. It gets you excited. It gives you hope for a better. Hey, we all sit here. We want a better future than we have today. So it gives you hope that way for sure. Does it translate into a year from now? I can't say. That just totally depends. I mean, we just played a team with a lot of picks the other night. Some really, really, really high picks, and they're still trying to find their way into the playoffs. So it doesn't guarantee success, but it certainly gives you hope.
Do you expect any changes to your staff at all? Or?
I haven't. I'll sit down. I mean, part of that is their interest from other people and our staff members. So that's all stuff I'll sit down with later on. I haven't specifically gone through that.
So Dan has 2 years left. I mean, if there is an interest, would you expect Doug to be back?
Say that again, no?
I know Dan has 2 years left in his
Uh-huh,
deal.
uh-huh.
If there is an interest from other teams, would you expect Doug Huda to?
Right now, I don't anticipate a whole many moves at all. So yes, I do anticipate with Doug him being back. So yeah.
You think you're going to be watching the playoffs every second that you can, or how do you?
Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, I like watching the playoffs because you can learn. I'm jealous. Like, it sucks watching it too. You're sitting there watching, and you're disappointed you're not in it. So we'll watch series, we'll pick teams, we'll dissect what they do, we'll do all that type of stuff. But as a general hockey fan, I won't certainly enjoy it. And last year, where the Worlds was 1 week earlier, so you watched a little bit of the first, and you went over there and you weren't able to see it. You came back, you saw the finals, and it was at that point you're over it, but not over it, but you know what I mean. So I guess what I'd say to you is I'll watch it to learn, but I'll be super jealous.
You pulling for coup?
Well, then I got to listen to him all summer, and he's got a short little bald assistant by the name of Lalonde that he runs his mouth even worse. So you know what, they've worked hard to be in the position they're in. So I don't know if that's an answer.
Just the special teams, is it baffling as to why you guys, is part of this year just the injuries? Or?
Well, nah, I don't want to. I don't think. To me, the injuries shouldn't dictate the specialty teams. I think the last, I thought the last stretch of games there, Larkin, that unit was really good. If you look around the league, the best power play units have been together a number of years for the most part, with maybe a piece moved here and a piece inserted. I mean, if you really look at those best ones, for the most part, they've been able to develop chemistry over time. So I'm hoping the chemistry that group gained at the end of the year, they can continue on going into next year. I'll start them in a similar fashion in the roles, in the spots they were in. So I'm hoping that chemistry can really help us on the power play. I thought our penalty kill the second half of the year was better, but we don't have the numbers to show for it. Now, one thing about looking at process is sometimes if you don't look at process and you only look at results, you make really poor decisions because sometimes you don't get results in the short term. I thought the plan, I thought the structure, I think we can build upon it and get better at it, but I thought it was pretty good the second half of the year. It's got to be better. Where our kill has to be better. Now, the other side of that, too, is we got to look at and say, do we have to use different people? And are there other people that would be more effective on the penalty kill than the guys we've used? And so that's something we'll have to look at.